know that most of what you've seen, read, or heard about Billy the Kid is untrue? My name is Gail Cooper. I'm a medical doctor and forensic psychiatrist. My specialty is murder case consultation for the defense. For 20 years, I've used my expertise to uncover the real Billy the Kid. Researching over 40,000 pages of archival documents and books, I've written the revisionist history. It's shocking, it's liberating, and I've written books demolishing the hoaxes, hijacking the history. My talks will share with you what I've found. Cover-ups, misinformation, and fakery, to use Old West lingo, will bite the dust. This talk presents my revisionist perspective on the only letter Billy Bonney sent to Governor Lew Wallace in 1880. The information is from my book, The Lost Pardon of Billy the Kid, an analysis factoring in the Santa Fe Ring, Governor Lew Wallace's dilemma, and a territory in rebellion. On December 12, 1880, Billy Bonney sent a long, strange, and unique letter to New Mexico Territory Governor Lew Wallace. It sheds light on the real Billy the Kid. The letter stemmed from Billy's March of 1879 letters and meetings with Wallace to make a pardon bargain for annulling his Lincoln County War indictments. He kept his part, which was testifying that April against murderers of attorney Houston Chapman. But Wallace issued no pardon, as discussed in Talk 22, linked below. Worse, by 1880, Wallace was backing the Santa Fe Ring's Secret Service pursuit of Billy, as discussed in Talk 27, linked below. By that December 12th, however, Billy knew only that a Secret Service operative named Azariah Wild was in the territory pursuing counterfeiters. Since he wasn't one, he didn't think Wild was after him. He learned about Wild in October of 1880 through his attorney, Ira Leonard's, trying to get him a new pardon bargain through Wild. It involved Billy's testifying against the counterfeiters in exchange for it. When Wild's ring handlers found out, they convinced Wild that Billy was in the counterfeiting gang and should be arrested at the pardon meeting. Billy discovered that plot by robbing the mail coach of Wild's daily reports to the Secret Service. So he backed out of the pardon negotiation. But he must have been perplexed and angry about his fictionalized outlawry. By November, ominous events were massing, but Billy was unaware they focused on him. Promoted by Azariah Wild, past Buffalo hunter Pat Garrett won the Lincoln County Sheriff's election. Billy had met Garrett in Fort Sumner in 1878. He would have thought Garrett's jurisdiction was limited to Lincoln County. He didn't know that Wild also got Garrett appointed as a deputy U.S. Marshal for territory-wide power to capture or kill him. By November 22nd, White Oak settlers, agitated by Wild's and Garrett's publicizing of a fictional Billy the Kid rustling counterfeiting gang, made a posse. They ambushed Billy and his few companions at Coyote Spring near their town. Murderously shooting, they killed 2 of the group's horses, but the men escaped. They stopped at the ranch of Whiskey Jim Greathouse. On November 28th, the posse ambushed them there. Jim Carlisle, a posseman who knew Billy, went in to negotiate surrender. In exchange, Greathouse went out to the possemen, but an accidental shot fired outside panicked Carlisle. He leapt out through a window. His men, mistaking him for Billy, killed him in friendly fire. Then they retreated. The posse later burned down Greathouse's ranch, and they lied that Billy had murdered Jim Carlisle. Billy, apparently, racked his brains to comprehend this lethal pursuit. On December 3rd, Billy read Las Vegas Gazette owner J.H. Kugler's article titled "Powerful Gang of Outlaws Harassing the Stockmen." It gave the Santa Fe Ring's full-blown outlaw myth of Billy the Kid and his gang. That solved part of Billy's mystery of the pursuit. He was accused as a rustling gang leader. He should have fled the territory, as most of the regulators had done after the Lincoln County War, but he didn't. Instead, he wrote to Governor Lew Wallace. The letter is strange because it is not about his pardon, which Billy certainly needed by that December 12th. It is strange because it shows that Billy was in denial that Wallace was betraying the bargain, since he still addressed Wallace as an ally and confidant. From guilty and self-centered Lew Wallace's point of view, Billy's persistence must have seemed like taunting. In fact, while irrationally clinging to Wallace as a father figure, Billy was trying to set things right, to be loved. It was the same course Wallace, with equally pathetic obstinacy, sought himself from General Ulysses S. Grant as pardon for his failure as a major general in the 1862 Civil War Battle of Shiloh. By the letter's December 12th date, Billy had endured more traumas. Another lost pardon, 2 White Oaks posse ambushes, and false accusation as Jim Carlisle's killer. Possibly his teenage lover, heiress Paulita Maxwell, in Fort Sumner, added to his determination to stay in the territory. His letter gives Fort Sumner as his address. And he had no idea that his time as a free man was fast running out. 7 days away was Pat Garrett's and his posse's ambush of Billy and his few companions at Fort Sumner's entrance corridor, shooting dead Tom O'Folliard instead of intended Billy. 10 days away was Billy's capture at Stinking Springs by Garrett and his posse, with Garrett shooting dead Charlie Bowdry when mistaking him for Billy. All Billy knew, as he complained in his letter to Wallace, was that Garrett had stolen 2 mules of his from the Thomas Yerby Ranch, but he would have found it shocking that he was the object of Garrett's pursuit, or that Garrett had been made a deputy U.S. Marshal by Secret Service operative Azariah Wild to arrest or kill him anywhere in the territory. Billy's reason for the letter was rebuttal of J.H. Kugler's Las Vegas Gazette article 9 days before. And adversity was transforming him since his last contact with Wallace. Raging at injustice, he was now famous, even with a flashy moniker, Billy the Kid, to be nationally known in 10 days in a New York Sun Outlaw Myth article. But not conceiving the magnitude of his adversaries, he blamed pursuit on the only person he knew was a traitor, the territory's cattle king, John Chisholm. Chisholm had been trusted by John Tunstall, Billy's beloved employer. Tunstall had made Chisholm president of his Lincoln Bank in his store, but when Tunstall and his Lincoln friend, attorney Alexander McSween, were attacked by the Ring, Chisholm gave no help. After Tunstall's Ring murder and its precipitated Lincoln County War, Chisholm withheld aid of his many cowboys, and he backed out of his promise to pay Tunstall's men, including Billy, who then fought as anti-ring regulators. Billy may have rustled from Chisholm in retribution. So Billy decided his troublemaking enemy was Chisholm. All this added up to the bold familiarity of Billy's letter with its message that justice was on his side and assumption that Lew Wallace cared. Wallace had also been writing self-justifying letters to one of his father figures, Secretary of the Interior Carl Schurz. On December 7th, 5 days before he got Billy's letter, he dovetailed his outlaw fabrications with Secret Service operative Azariah Wilds and had hidden Billy's new pardon for testimony bargain with Wild. And while betraying Billy and Lincoln County citizens, Wallace reverted to his despotic nature and requested Schurz's aid in repealing the Posse Comitatus Act so soldiers could hunt down citizens like Billy or repeat the Lincoln County War's annihilation. Wallace's evil letter to Schurz must be read in perspective of what he knew. He knew that the murder and arson in the Lincoln County War battle 2 years earlier had been by Fort Stanton's ring-eyed commander N.A.M. Dudley, violating the Posse Comitatus Act. He knew Lincolnites' fear of Dudley and his troops from Attorney Houston Chapman's letters. He knew Dudley and the Ring had Chapman murdered. He knew that Billy had fulfilled their pardon bargain. Truth and justice made no difference to self-serving Wallace. Wallace wrote, "From private advices received from Lincoln County last night, I have reason to believe a new trouble has broken out in Lincoln County. This time, however, it has one good feature. The civil officers of the county have taken the field to arrest outlaws, murderers, horse and cattle thieves, and counterfeiters. The affair suggests the great need of speedy repeal by Congress of the law prohibiting the use of regular soldiers as posse comitati. A large body of troops, including cavalry, is now quartered in Fort Stanton. If they were able to support the sheriff, short work could be made of the pending trouble." Close quote. This is what was in the mind of the man who would read Billy's letter in 7 days. On Sunday, December 12, 1880, Billy wrote to Lew Wallace with familiarity and equality. On screen is Billy Bonney's letter of December 12, 1880 to Governor Lew Wallace. To be noted is that its penmanship matched Billy's pardon bargain letters of March of 1879 as presented in Talk 6, link below. I'll read it and add commentary. Giving his address as Fort Sumner, Billy wrote, "I noticed in the Las Vegas Gazette a piece which stated that Billy the Kid, the name by which I'm known in the country, was the captain of a band of outlaws who hold forth at the Portales. There is no such organization in existence, so the gentleman must have drawn very heavily on his imagination." Note that Billy not only ridicules his outlaw myth, but wrongly assumes that Lew Wallace believes him and cares about the injustice. My business at the White Oaks, at the time I was waylaid and my horse killed, was to see Judge Leonard, who has my case in hand. He had written me to come up, that he thought he could get everything straightened up. I did not find him at the Oaks and should have gone to Lincoln if I had met with no accident. Note that Billy puts his Coyote Spring ambush of November 22nd in the context of meeting with his attorney, Ira Leonard, to end the injustice. Billy knew that Leonard had communicated with Wallace about his possible Secret Service pardon that October. He thought Wallace would sympathize. After mine and Billy Wilson's horses were killed, we both made our way to a station 40 miles from the Oaks, kept by Mr. Greathouse. When I got up the next morning, the house was surrounded by an outfit led by one Carlisle, who had come into the house and demanded a surrender. I asked for their papers. That meant warrants, and they had none. So I concluded that it amounted to nothing more than a mob, and told Carlisle that he would have to stay in the house and lead the way out that night. Soon after, a note was brought in stating that if Carlisle did not come out inside of 5 minutes, they would kill the station keeper, Greathouse, who had left the house and was with them. In a short time, a shot was fired on the outside, and Carlisle, thinking Greathouse was killed, jumped through the window, breaking the sash as he went, and was killed by his own party, thinking it was me trying to make my escape. The party then withdrew. Note that Billy described the Greathouse Ranch ambush, making clear the men's mob illegality with no warrants. He was wrong to think Wallace would take his word that Carlisle was killed in friendly fire, not by him. They returned the next day and burned an old man named Spencer's house, and Greathouse's also. Note that Billy presents the mob's lawless arson. He was wrong to think that Wallace cared. I made my way to this place afoot, and during my absence, Deputy Sheriff Garrett, acting under Chisholm's orders, went to the Portales and found nothing. Note that Billy again denies the Las Vegas Gazette articles saying he had a gang headquartered in Portales. On his way back, he went by Mr. Yerby's ranch and took a pair of mules of mine, which I had left with Mr. Bowdry, who was in charge of Mr. Yerby's cattle. He, Garrett, claimed that they were stolen, and even if they were not, he had a right to confiscate any outlaw's property. Note that Billy reports Garrett's harassment, but is unaware of the overall pursuit. And using his legal experience, he adds that even an outlaw has rights, in this case, protection from theft. But in his agitation, he misstates it as, even if they were not, he had a right to confiscate any outlaw's property. He meant to write, even if they were stolen, he had no right to confiscate any outlaw's property. And he wrongly thought Wallace cared. I had been at Sumner since I left Lincoln, making my living gambling. The mules were bought by me, the truth of which I can prove by the best citizens around Sumner. Note that Billy is claiming income by gambling, not rustling, and he is repeating a character reference offer, like in his March 13, 1879 pardon bargain letter, which stated, "As to my character, I refer to any of the citizens, for the majority of them are my friends and have been helping me all they could." Billy didn't guess that the last thing Wallace wanted was proof of his innocence. Wallace was framing Billy himself. J.S. Chisholm is the man who got me into trouble and was benefited thousands by it and is now doing all he can against me. Note that Billy had wrongly concluded that John Chisholm was behind the attacks on him. There's no doubt but what there is a great deal of stealing going on in the territory, and a great deal of the property is taken across the Staked Plains, as it is a good outlet. But so far as my being at the head of a band, there is nothing of it. Note that Billy yet again denies the outlaw myth. In several instances, I have recovered stolen property when there was no chance to get an officer to do it. One instance for Hugo Zuber, Post Office Puerto de Luna, another for Pablo Anaya, same place. Note that Billy presents his Robin Hood role known to his partisans. He was wrong to think Wallace cared. If some impartial party were to investigate this matter, they would find it far different from the impression put out by Chisholm and his tools. Note that Billy hopes that Wallace will back him by investigation. Billy signed as William Bonney, realistic enough to pull back from the vulnerable Billy as Billie signature of his previous letter on March 24, 1879. In response to Billy's letter, Lew Wallace's sadism surged in mixed identification with his own sadistic father and rage at reminder of his moral failure as the pardon bargain's betrayer. He sought to silence this symbol of his hypocrisy by a hanging death. So the next day, December 13th, Wallace requested from Territorial Secretary William Rich a reward notice. Though other regulators were on Lincoln County war indictments, Wallace focused just on Billy. He wrote, "Be good enough to prepare a draft of proclamation of reward, $500, for the capture and delivery of William Bonney, alias Kid, to the sheriff of the county of Lincoln." 9 days later, on December 22nd, Wallace placed it in the ring-eyed Las Vegas Gazette, whose outlaw myth of Billy the Kid article had precipitated Billy's cry for help letter. It appeared in a front-page column titled, "Billy the Kid, $500 reward." It stated, "I will pay $500 reward to any person or persons who will capture William Bonney, alias the Kid, and deliver him to any sheriff of New Mexico. Satisfactory proofs of identity will be required. Lew Wallace, Governor of New Mexico." The day after Lew Wallace had requested his Billy the Kid reward notice, he implemented his own escape from the territory and his failures into his fantasy world of savior and salvation. On December 14, 1880, he wrote to Secretary of the Interior Carl Schurz requesting leave to promote his book, Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ. And he continued his self-promoting outlaw myth by focus on Billy. He wrote, "I have intelligence today from Lincoln County. The citizens are yet in the field under a very active and energetic Deputy Sheriff Pat Garrett, who has had several skirmishes, meaning Coyote Spring and Great House Ranch ambushes. To stimulate them, I have made proclamation of $500 reward for the capture and delivery of the leader of the outlaws, Billy the Kid." The next day, December 15th, having relegated Billy to near certain death, Wallace callously wrote to his son Henry to check his Ben-Hur sales and his New Mexico Territory mining investments. But fate would have it that Lew Wallace's hypocrisy would be tested to the end. He would next have to face captured Billy's letters from the Santa Fe jail, reminding him of their pardon bargain, Billy's fulfilling it, and his betrayal.